lot on my mind that I want to talk about. I'm calling this a tiny spot of senseless mystery, which is taken from chapter 20, the vision of holiness, section 6, the temple of the Holy Spirit. And within that section, he describes the body as the ego's chosen weapon for seeking power through relationships. He describes the body as an isolated speck of darkness, a hidden secret room, a tiny spot of senseless mystery, a meaningless enclosure carefully protected, yet hiding nothing. A tiny spot of senseless mystery. So he also says the body is the ego's idol, the belief in sin made flesh and then projected outward. This produces what seems to be a wall of flesh around the mind, keeping it prisoner in a tiny spot of space and time, beholden unto death, and given but an instant in which to sigh and grieve and die in honor of its master. And this unholy instant seems to be life, an instant of despair, a tiny island of dry sand, bereft of water, and set uncertainly upon oblivion. Here does the Son of God stop briefly by to offer his devotion to death's idols and then pass on. And here he is more dead than living. Having accepted the ego thought system, we believe, as he says, a little piece of glass, a speck of dust, a body, or a war are one to us. I wanted to read that whole quote because it's kind of relentless in driving home what we believe we are, what we chose, what it looks like when we stop looking through the ego lens that sees value and differences, and some things are better, and some things are prettier, and some things are uglier, and all of those distinctions that we made that make us, seem to hide the despair that we feel because some things seem pleasant to us and some things seem unpleasant. So if we value one thing made of nothing, we believe that nothing can be precious. And we think we can learn how to make the untrue true. So we taught ourselves to value nothing. And in that section, he says that the Holy Spirit sees where we are, but knows we are elsewhere. So he begins his lesson in simplicity, as contrasted with the complexity we seem to have created, with the fundamental teaching that the truth is true. And he says this is the hardest lesson you will ever learn, and in the end, the only one. And the reason why it's so hard for us is because we really overlearned the lesson we taught ourselves, that nothing is valuable. We don't experience, a belief that a little piece of glass, a body, or a war are one to us. We don't think a newborn baby is the same exact thing as a speck of dust. We seem to believe there are precious things. And he's trying to teach us that that belief that nothing can be precious, nothing in a form that seems like something, which is very natural for all of us to believe there are precious things here. I don't think it's ever going to appear to be any different. We don't take the course and then try to apply it at the level of the world, because that's just a different version of insanity. So he meets us where we seem to be, and he's describing to us what our life seems to be, an instant of despair, set uncertainly upon oblivion. Those are the kinds of things that our entire lives are set up to not look at, to not acknowledge. From the moment we learn that all things that are alive around us will die, a natural, normal psychological reaction would be to never recover from that information, because inherent in that information is that nothing can matter. Nothing can matter unless you have accepted and believed this is life. And we have to think about the past, the present, and the future. So it might not matter to us today, but it will matter tomorrow. Maybe it didn't matter in the past and it matters to us right now. We have to constantly judge things in order to maintain the illusion itself, and in order to navigate the weird maze we created, so that in the world's terms, we don't seem insane. And sometimes when you study the Course, particularly initially, it can seem like you can feel like you're losing your mind. It can feel like you're going insane, because you're, in Jesus's terms, becoming partially sane, where you've been exposed to reflections of truth. And those reflections of truth seem to shift and change on the journey. So initially, you may see a reflection of truth being, oh, what the symbols I believe I love in the world, I love because of what I think they get me. I love because of their reaction to me. I love because they seem to make me more comfortable or put me at ease. And I won't love the things that don't make me comfortable, don't put me at ease, and don't seem to love and care for me. So it's all very childlike when we're first realizing, oh, that's what I have accepted and adopted, and what I feel like I've learned from outside of me. Those witnesses that we trained in their testimony, they're not really training us. They're not really witnessing to specifics about the world. That's our experience of it. They're teaching us about the world. They're teaching us how to maneuver in the world and manipulate and get our needs met. But what they're really doing underneath that is teaching us what we are. So we trained them in their testimony. We put those figures in the dream to teach me, I am a dream figure. I am this body. I am limited. And the despair that must come along with existence in the world seems, as you get older, I guess there's different phases, I would say. So it can seem that, when you come into adulthood, it's sort of easy to deny that despair, unless seems to be an antagonist in the world that we can blame for that experience. So of course, there's nothing outside of us that gives birth to despair within us, but that's how it seems. Then as we get older, our bodies start failing. People that we love, we lose. As things happen, that despair surfaces more and more frequently. And then, as you move forward, you think more and more about the end, and, a reevaluation. So that body experience is what he's describing here. The body is the ego's idol. We do believe that there is a wall of flesh around the mind, and we're prisoner in a tiny spot of space and time, beholden unto death. We sigh and grieve and die in honor of its master. So it does seem that our life is this unholy instant. When we're reading that, to have the Course bring into awareness those fundamental aspects of being alive in the world, that no one ever talks about that. People, if anything, what we're exposed to more in life is hopeful ideas, where we can pursue things in the dream that will bring joy to us. And we try to avoid the things that will bring pain. And, we just try to be as comfortable as we can. So if you're drawn to the Course, you're drawn to pulling off that first veneer of the possibility of the better dream. And that can be a very bitter pill if we're looking at it with our ego. So I am the tiny spot of senseless mystery that he's talking about there. That's what I made of myself. If I look at that with my ego, I'll be kind of doubly blind and despairing. And the ego's not my friend. It will bring to awareness the fear, pain, and guilt, the terror that I feel in existence, the recognition that no sense of safety is possible in being this tiny spot of senseless mystery. Only when we look upon it with the Holy Spirit, we take Jesus's hand, if we look upon it through that different lens that is not our ego, um, uh, can we look without judgment? We can't look without judgment alone. This process is not one in which we walk alone. If anything, he makes the point that we're either holding the hand of our ego or holding the hand of Jesus at every moment. And Jesus implores us to let his relationship with us be real to us. So this idea that, oh, it's just me and the truth within me, and I am that truth and this and that, is not really the course process. It's kind of like the idea that, well, I can do this on my own because I am that truth I'm seeking. But we've put ourselves in a situation, once I believe I'm a tiny spot of senseless mystery, I need help. And Jesus is very real in the sense that he is the name we give to the help available to us to look with vision, to look with the mind's eye and not the body's eyes on everything that we think we are, that we think we see, that we think the world is, and that we think God is. And it's not an easy process because we have established our entire identity on never looking at that, never letting go of the hands of our chosen friends, fear, pain, and guilt. Those are the friends that we're familiar with. Those are the friends we rush back to. And we all do it. So he describes that as a description of the body being the ego's idol is really what we've made of ourselves. We're the ego's idol. We are the ego thought system made real and given living form. And he's always talking about what we believe we are. Now he talks about the ego as though we're separate from us to convince us there's another voice, there's another hand to hold, there's another way to look upon it. So in the guiltless world, he talks about what the world is in these terms. This world is the symbol of punishment, and all the laws that seem to govern it are the laws of death. Children are born into it through pain and in pain. Their growth is attended by suffering, and they learn of sorrow and separation and death. Their minds seem to be trapped in their brain, and its powers to decline if their bodies are hurt. They seem to love, yet they desert and are deserted. They appear to lose what they love, perhaps the most insane belief of all. And their bodies wither and gasp and are laid in the ground and are no more. Not one of them but has thought that God is cruel. So he's describing the world as a symbol of punishment, but it's our experience of that world that is clearly the symbol of punishment. Everything that everyone must go through in this world. And yes, not one of us but has thought that God is cruel. If this were the real world, God would be cruel. He describes this world as a picture of the crucifixion of God's Son. So I say what I focus on and what I feel like I repeat over and over again is this idea that the course, the process of the course is not a new version of denial. It's not, well, I'm going to join with the Holy Spirit. I'm going to be that reflection of truth. I'm going to experience myself differently. That pays no attention to the degree to which Jesus goes to show us what we believe, what we cling to, what we are enamored by, which is ourselves. We don't want to give up the self we made. If we wanted to give up the self we made, there'd be no world. There wouldn't be 8 billion people in that world. You wouldn't seem to be walking the world. I wouldn't see a reflection in the mirror in the morning. So I want to promote some type of humility, not to take away any positive thing someone might be experiencing, but just in order to say that there is a deeper level that will only be reached by doing just what Jesus says. There are other non-dual paths that do not focus on murder being the foundation of the world, on how there is no value in this dream whatsoever, and all you have to do is look at it to see that. Look with the mind's eye. And studying, reading the course brings that into awareness unless we don't want it to. We don't really want to hear about the hungry dogs of fear. We don't really want to hear about the dark forest of the sightless, and we don't want to hear about the garden of agony and death. If we only want to focus on, oh, I'm in my right mind, I'm with the Holy Spirit, and I'm experiencing myself totally differently, that can become a block to moving forward on this path in a meaningful way. So I'm promoting this humility in saying, I don't know anything. I see what he's saying about what I made. I don't believe that that is the truth. I don't believe that what I made is the truth, but I'm clinging to it. And so there's contradictions and paradoxes, and you think, well, how am I going to move forward with this? Well, he gives explicit instructions on how to move forward with it. And letting your relationship to Jesus be real means in the moment when there's a question, talk to him. We don't have to say, well, Jesus is just the word, the name given that represents the truth that we seem split off from, our true identity that we have denied to experience the dream, the illusion, the hallucination. Um, we have to let our relationship with him be real to us. And I know that the course is full of contradictions, but the process itself is pretty simple. We have to look upon devastation. The miracle reminds the mind that what it sees is false. If we can't look on that devastation because it's so awful, and we can't see what we made of ourselves and how we don't know what love is, we don't know what kindness is, we don't know what real gentleness is. We just seem trapped in this cycle of acting out um, sin, guilt, and fear, and all of the possible manifestations it can take. Um, but Jesus um, is there to help us. So, one of the reasons why it's so important that we look upon the darkness and the way it's manifested, the way it seems to be manifest outside of us, the way it seems to be manifest within us, because the outside is just an outward picture of an inward condition. When we withdraw those projections, is because our motivation for learning the course and moving forward on the course is the misery. How can you be made ready, save through sight of all your misery? If we try to step around that misery, say, I'm just going to join with the Holy Spirit. I don't like what those people are doing over there, so I'm going to look at it with the Holy Spirit and keep it separate as though it had nothing to do with you. Then um, the progress, I think, will become stunted. And we all do it because none of us wants to learn the course. We don't want to give up our identity. We want a better dream. And I just feel like it's just another layer of deception to pretend there is not that conflict going on. We want the better dream, but we recognize reading the course and studying it, this is the way. This is my way. My way's been decided, and this is what it is. Um, but of course, um, it appears to be a process. It's experienced as a process. So in The Guiltless World, The Fear of Redemption, chapter 13, section 3, he says, the pain in this mind, when it is uncovered, when the pain in the mind is so apparent when it's uncovered, its need for healing cannot be denied, or words to that effect. So if we're trying to avoid the pain in the mind, how are we going to acknowledge the need for healing? We all have a need for healing. If we have a body, if we're walking this world, we have a need for healing. And it's true for all of us, all the time. All the tricks and games we can offer it um, will not work. And he says, for here is the real crucifixion of God's Son. So I suppose I'm really just talking about our call for help and the ways in which we avoid hearing it. We want to see it outside of ourselves, or we only see it when we are triggered by something and think, oh, I need help right now. But I'm really just talking about the relentless call for help that rises within the mind from us to our creator or the truth or love. Because as Ken Wapnick would say, we're all homeless orphans here. We're homeless orphans. We're either terrified or we're denying the terror that's within us. So the goal isn't to make us more terrified, But to say, um, to bring us to that moment in time where we can see, I don't know anything. I don't, uh, I don't believe the truth that I have established. Um, and I recognize I chose the ego thought system. And again, being in your right mind is being in your wrong mind and looking upon it with Jesus or the Holy Spirit. When you look upon it with Jesus or the Holy Spirit, then you can look upon it without judgment. And then we look, wait, and quietly do nothing. We don't try to fix it. We don't try to make it better. We don't try to call it nice things. We just look. What are we looking at? We're looking at what essentially is the hatred and murder in our own minds, projected outside of ourselves and playing out psychologically, physically, emotionally, how we cut people off. If I want to get away from somebody, in coarse terms, I want to murder them. I want to kill them off, you know, saying, you're not welcome here anymore. I'm killing you off. Um, you can come on over, but you can't. And just, um, the selection, the selection of what's acceptable to us and what's not acceptable, what's acceptable or what calls for vengeance. Those things all play out over and over and over again every single day, not as something apart from us, but when we can realize I am projecting out a thought system I adopted, embraced, and quote, love, um, because I want to be special. And I maintain that specialness by my face of innocence, my judgments, and my grievances. So without my face of innocence, my judgments, and my grievances, what am I and where am I? So those are the things we need to look at. My judgments, my grievances, my face of innocence, um, how much we want to be right, we want God to be wrong, and how devoted we are to that. So if we're not looking, but just kind of taking the hand of the Holy Spirit and trying to have that reflection, as a body, trying to have that reflection of truth and experience a nice moment within hell, um, then we're not really practicing the course, because the course is looking. And Jesus in the Happy Learner describes us as steadfastly devoted to misery. So we don't want to believe that about ourselves. I don't want to believe I'm steadfastly devoted to misery, but that resonates because when we read the Course and we see it's our way, even those things that we conflict with, we could argue with, we don't want to believe, we recognize must be true. Within the context of those 1,400 pages, Jesus presents his closing argument, and we can see the truth in those words, being steadfastly devoted to misery. And he also describes our need to first recognize we're miserable and not happy. Otherwise, the future will be like the past, and we will continue to make the same choice over and over and over again, choosing to see the cause of our experiences being outside of us, feeling like helpless victims, blaming everything and everyone for our experience, and getting angry. So if we can see all this, if we can see everything he's describing and allow it into awareness and not look away from it, what seems to be inside of us, the sin and guilt and fear that does get projected out into the world, the terror and pain and misery that attends being a body in this world. If we can see that and not look away, and see what we made of ourselves, then without screaming, we are looking with Jesus and not our ego. So I think we really can't deceive ourselves for very long, um, because the pain in our mind does become apparent. And maybe it does take something that seems to be outside of us to bring it into awareness. That's the magic trick, blaming what's outside of us. But it's that pain that is the motivator. It is sight of our misery that motivates us to do what he says to do in the book. and to begin to withdraw our projections and to begin to say, what does any of this have to do with me? I think that we can even see when we do get upset that on some level, we really don't care about any of it. On some level, we are just playing a game with ourselves, even trying to convince ourselves that we care. I don't like what that body did. I don't like what that country did or that president did or my sister did or my father did. I don't like these things. But on some level, we don't care. There's something larger that's calling to us beyond all of those things, beyond everything that we seem to cling to, the judgments, grievances, face of innocence. And he describes in the Course this ring of terror. But see, even to reach that, to move beyond the layers of deception, to go deeper and deeper, means that we're ready to face that terror because we cannot be alone. We cannot be alone at the moment that we get that deep. And on the other side of that is the deep and burning love for God and the way home. And preparing ourselves is really recognizing I don't know anything. That's not insulting. It's not insulting that my understanding of the truth is a contribution. Or there's a quote. You believe your understanding is a great contribution to the truth and makes it what it is. So we can be ready to let that go because it doesn't serve us. We don't gain anything from that. And when we recognize that we don't gain anything from something, the mind lets it go. It's just that belief that there's something there that I want. And then we look upon that with a gentle smile, with the recognition that it's silly. And we don't make a big deal out of it. We will falter. We don't make a big deal out of that. We'll get angry. We won't make a big deal out of it. Other people will. So not making a big deal out of something is looking on it without judgment. Because the ego will always want us to make a big deal out of everything. And the ego will want us to believe we know what love is. Because in the recognition that we don't know, the truth will come rushing in. It's only because we constantly write that truth in the tiny gap and leave no space in our own denial for the truth to come that we don't experience it. The Course process does work. And you will have an experience that removes all doubt, if you haven't already. It will come and give you the certainty that you need. And ultimately, not with the body's eyes and not within a body, we will see the face of Christ, and never need we think there was ever something else to see. Thank you for listening.